Given your history, and you had some celebrated occasions in your career where you thought people were going after you and making you feel inhibited, 2014 you targeted Drew Petrie, all-round good bloke. I know we don't target blokes because they're good or bad blokes, but that became quite... nasty's not the word. Is it a bit testing?
I think Drew made the response at the time that you know, some people in the media just are trying to make a name for themselves, and
that was you,
and that was me, yeah. And I just made the point again in my next media forum that I'm never trying to make a name for myself. It's just how I saw Drew playing his football at the time, and I was more than happy a year later or 10 weeks later to say, you know what, I got that wrong. I said Drew was just about done, and he's not. You know, so I'm more than happy to put my hand up and say when I got something wrong, and you know, I did at that time.
And did he not apologise to you?
Yeah, he did. He just said that, which I fully understood, that I apologised for my response at that time, because he said I was just under so much pressure, so much strain. I knew I wasn't going well, and the way I responded was to vent on you, which I shouldn't have done. I said, Drew, fully understand that. I've been there before as well.
Geez, you're off the long run in 2014. Yeah. Petrie, Cyril Rioli, Buddy, the entire Western Bulldogs football club, Daisy Thomas. Do you run your own race, or do people counsel you and sort of say, look, maybe it's time for a positive story, or you just do it as you see it?
No, the Age, Channel 9 and 3AW have never said, I think you should do this, I think you should say that. It's all from watching as 9 games of football a weekend.
You watch them all?
I see 3 live, and I'll watch I'd say it's 3 to 4 on television, and then I'll record one and I'll get to it on a late Sunday night, early Monday if I can.
You must be interesting company for Lisa.
It is hard. It is really hard, and I've got 3 young kids as well. But the Cyril one was probably one that got a huge reaction. I wrote it in the Age that Cyril has underachieved for the talent that he's actually got. This was probably 2 years ago.
2014 it was.
2014, and I think I look at Stevie Johnson, I look at Gary Ablett Jr. They've gone from forward pockets who get 9 to 10 touches a game and cameos to becoming 30 possession players. And Cyril has to get... His stats haven't changed since his first season, 2009. And I remember they were playing Richmond at the MCG that Sunday that I wrote the column, and I'm at the park with my kids and I was checking the stats. How's Cyril going? He had 5 disposals till half-time. I thought, yeah, I'm right on the money here. Next minute,
we all do that.
Next minute, my Twitter went into meltdown because Cyril kicked 4 in 5 minutes and won the game for Richmond, for Hawthorn against Richmond. And so I got absolutely hammered. Derm came out and said that the editor should have pulled the column, that it was just like an irresponsible column to write. And, you know, Derm did apologise to me 24 hours later because I took exception to that, saying, Derm, you said Hawthorn wouldn't make the top 4 and they won a flag. So we've all got opinions. And that was mine at the time, and I still stand by it, and Cyril's become a much better player in the last 2 years.
I noticed him look up to the 3AW box that day, but you weren't on.
No, no, I wasn't.
The Bulldogs, Matty, again in 2014, you were really disparaging about the entire football club and its future.
You'll have to remind me on that one, Mike, because I can't even remember those comments.
My memory is that you cast gloom about their future and where they
I suppose at the time, if it's what I remember, when the coach... Was it Brendan McCartney's year? Or? Yeah, Brendan McCartney leaving, obviously when the captain wants out. Yep. Yeah, all those sorts of things.
I shared that view, I must say.
Yeah.
And I expressed that publicly at a function I was at. Yeah. And I get reminded of it.
Yeah, and I was critical of Brendan McCartney's game style through that year. They were having numbers around the ball. It was all about a contested ball that he had with Geelong at... under Mark Bomber Thompson, and then they were leaving men back behind the ball, dropping off. Fletcher took 12 marks one game. Harry Taylor took 10 marks another. I thought it was unfair on the forward line at the time. Yeah, so that was just an opinion I had at the time.
Your contemporaries, they don't like it, do they? There's lots of things that are accepted on the footy field, but no bloke likes seeing someone else stage for free.
It's interesting. Lee Matthews often says it's in the rules. Selwood and Shuey and these guys... It's in the rules.
Do they stage?
I think they do, yeah.
You do?
I think they work the rules to their advantage. So they get down low. I'm surprised a technique hasn't been... You know, there's a million coaches now with AFL clubs that when you know you're playing Paul Piopolo, Joel Selwood and Luke Shuey, you change your technique with the tackle as the way they drop at the knee. So, you know, I've never been one to like what they do. but I don't say it too often because obviously
Because of your history.
Because of my history, yeah.
Were you more blatant than them, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say
You were more. My memory is you were. If there was a slight touch to the back, you would throw yourself
lurching forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's sort of something that probably a worse attempt at getting a free kick than what they're doing. But I think now to protect the head and all those sorts of things, I think we'll see a change at the end of this season. Not only for the bloke driving forward, but the guys dropping at the knees. I think there'll be an adjustment there.
When did the alarm bells first ring for you? When did you actually feel this sense of unease about what was transpiring at Windy Hill?
Well, I saw some tweets originally that there's things going down at Essendon. I rang Angus Monfries, who's one of my best friends, who was still at the club. He goes, "It's absolute rubbish storm in a teacup, that'll be." And thought nothing of it. And next minute, there's a press conference being held and the look on James's face. James I'd look at before games, and James was a warrior, and he'd have the forehead all screwed up, and I just watched him in this press conference, pale. David Evans, who I have a great amount of respect for, I could sense that there was going to be trouble brewing, and then I was hearing that they were putting pressure, the AFL, on James to stand down as coach of the football club, and so I knew this.
So you knew you didn't think this was not a scare campaign. You didn't think this was a mountain out of a molehill. You thought that there was something seriously amiss.
Just as the weeks unfolded, I knew this was something that was probably going to be the biggest story. Aside from Wayne Carey and what happened there, this was going to be the biggest story because it affected all of North Melbourne. But this affected players that may never lose their careers out of this. I knew this was going to be the biggest story in the history of the game.
Who's the biggest victim? Is Hurdy the biggest victim?
No, the players.
The players?
Players are, yeah. Well, James, as I said, was part of it in that they made a decision to go down a supplement program. The players, I've argued with Dwayne Russell before. He said, you take responsibility, you ask questions, surely you talk to people about this. But, I remember when John Quinn, my long-time fitness coach, said, after a game you walk in, there's some powders and there's some tablets for you to take. I just did it. So this was to another level, and my mum has asked me, what would you have done in that situation? Would you have taken these injections? And I hate needles, like David Zaharakis, but I've had players say to me, it wasn't like this big needle, it was just a little prick, and you got on with it.
You would have had painkillers plenty of times, wouldn't you?
Only, I think, once in my career for a shoulder that was troubling me, and to get back for the final. So it was something that Bruce Reid just refused. It was the last option for Bruce. So, I love Bruce, and so I've hated, this has broken down friendships forever.
For you?
Not for me, no. For guys like Bruce and obviously James, they're okay, but they were the best of friends and all that. David Evans and James, it's been a sad tale.
We're at Olympic time, you know that. Can you imagine any Olympic athlete outside of Russia saying, "Oh, you want to inject me? Oh, okay, whack away. I don't care what's in it."
Yeah.
Didn't the players have some responsibility?
Yeah, they do, but they'll say that they signed off and they were told about the 4 supplements they'd be taking, and they were all approved. And now what they were given is another story. So they signed off on A, B, C and D, and that the sad part is that they still don't know whether they were given E, F and G. So that's the scary part, and so, I wasn't there. So that's how they'll explain to me.
But you would have spoken to a lot of blokes you played with.
And that's their answer for it. That they were told what they were going to be given, and that's why they signed off on it.
For the record, is it literally true that Zaharakis' fear of needles meant that he missed the program? Is that right?
That, and he also, I think and he also didn't feel comfortable with it. So I think he needs some credit for that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the very early, mid-90s. There was a game, the Bombers are playing the Swans at the SCG. You leave the ground with an injury. It nearly claimed your life, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a scary moment. We talk about hip and shoulders with Brad Saul. It was actually, Sheeds picked me for the prelim. It was my 16th game of football. I probably wasn't ready to be playing in a hostile SCG final. You know, Tony Lockett's there and Dunkley and these champions for Sydney that have been around a long time. And I just couldn't get near the footy. So what I try and do, I'll try and impact the game another way. So I saw Mark Bayes chasing a player. I tried to run through him. I was 80 kilos, I think, at the time. And my elbows just come straight back into my chest. I was 4 minutes to go in the second quarter and I thought I was heavily winded. So I go into the halftime address. I'm trying to listen to Sheeds and I'm struggling to stay with him because I just was in pain and I was feeling faint. I went and saw Reedy and Reedy said, you know, I reckon you're winded, badly winded. I reckon you'll be right. So I run out after to start the third quarter and I played for another 4 or 5 minutes and I'm feeling dizzy. And so I pretty much ran straight off and I said, I'm in trouble here. So one of the physios took me to a King's Cross hospital on a Saturday night and I'm laying there in pain, people yelling, there's drug addicts around, all sorts of things. They filled me with morphine and they said to me, can you hop? I hopped. They said, you feeling better? I said, yeah, I'm feeling better. They said, he's right to go home. I'm laying in my hotel room in Sydney. They lose by a point when Plugger kicks the winning point. My parents come up to see me and I said, can you help me to the toilet because I can't get there myself. And I passed blood. They called up Dr. Bruce Reid again and he said to me, have you got shoulder pain? And I just stopped for a second. I said, my shoulder is killing me. Why is that? He goes, that's a spleen. Wow. So straight away I went back to hospital, was there, lost 10 kilos, couldn't leave Sydney for 10 days and couldn't have any contact for 4 months. So it was very, very lucky that my parents were in Sydney, could get me back to the hospital.
Imagine what, you were alone in a hotel room.
And maybe fell asleep, I don't know. Yeah. I was in too much pain to fall asleep, but if you had to try to tough it out,
Gee, Matty, your father John played 20-odd games for the Blues and oddly enough wore number 18.
Yeah, that's where the 18 heirloom really started for us, Mike. So Dad played 29 games for Carlton under Ron Barassi through the mid-60s and, I grew up, the father-son rule was 20 games when I was growing up, so I grew up thinking if I'm ever going to be good enough to play AFL, I'll be playing for Carlton. But
what about the fact that you had Bernie Quinlan's number on your Fitzroy jumper?
Yeah, well, being young, I remember going to a game of football, one of my initial games, and Bernie kicked the bag of 9, kicking him from the centre of the ground. So I was a Bernie and Fitzroy supporter. We
can't have an interview with Matthew Lloyd without talking about grass of the growing variety, right? Even under the roof that Eddie had. What's the origin of that habit of picking the grass up and throwing it in the air?
Well, I'm a very superstitious person. I'm big on routine. I did the same thing the night before games. I like to do the same things the day of games. And as I said, I wasn't a very good kick early in my career, my first 2 or 3 years. That I was always practising my craft at Windy Hill. And often I was having to aim for the point post to actually try and kick a goal. That's how bad it was. Some sessions I'd just walk inside because I was killing my own confidence by actually trying to kick at Windy Hill. So, and that's where it probably started. I had a few days I trialled it at under 18 level for the Western Jets, and I improved. Because so it was just something that grew in my head, and I started to become a safer kick. And it was interesting. I wrote Malcolm Blight a letter one day saying I was interested in your commentary on the way I played a few nights ago. Well, could I ever sit down with you and talk to you about my footy? And I had a great chat with Malcolm. He spoke to me about running patterns as a forward and all that sort of thing and how you should play. Leo Barry was giving me some troubles and he gave me some tips on how I should play Leo Barry next time around. And I said, have you got any last thing that you can give me on my footy? He said, yeah, get rid of that grass throwing. It's ridiculous. So I went to a training session and we're playing in a practice game and I wasn't kicking and I felt lost. And the boys said, you didn't kick too well today. And they said, what happened? I said, Malcolm Blight told me I should stop the grass throwing. They said, why would you do that when it's worked for you for the last 5 or 6 years? Who cares what it looks for when a roof's on and all that sort of thing? So I decided that's what's going to be it for the rest of my career. Yeah.
And the roof did look a bit odd, I must say.
Well, players initially were just absolutely giving it to me when I was lining up.
Opposition.
Yeah. But once I started kicking them, it soon stopped. Yeah. Players thought, well, it's not getting to him, I'll stop. So I just kept doing it.
Luke Hodge, Matty.
Yeah.
An institution at Hawthorn and admired by everyone that follows the game. He hasn't been immune either, has he?
No, I'd said that this year that Luke would probably be the most vulnerable of those senior players moving forward at the end of the year. And as I said, I don't make those comments lightly because it's really tough, you know, and I've been in that position before and it's really challenging. But, you know, what do? You can't sit back. You're paid by your employees to make comment, and that was just one I genuinely believed. Luke did speak to me about it, Luke Hodge.
He sought you out?
No, well, I was interviewing him at a Hawthorn game 2 weeks later, and he asked me on an ad break. He said, I saw you a day beforehand, why didn't you bring that up to me at the time? And I said, Luke, wasn't on my mind at the time. You know, it was just that, you know, I feel like Hawthorn, you know, you're going to fall off the edge some stage soon, and the club's going to have to make hard calls because you can't have too many players retiring at the one time. And Luke said OK, but I could tell he was hurt by that, and I fully understand that he would be hurt by that.
Isn't it funny, in my 40 years in journalism, I always believed that the players never read the papers.
Yeah, of course they do. they absolutely hear everything.
You appear on Channel 9 on 2 shows. You're on 3AW Weekly, and you write a column for The Age. Do you prefer one form of the media over the others? I
don't prefer one or the other because I genuinely... I find the writing the most challenging and radio the most relaxing, where you can just chew the fat and have a great discussion. TV, there's a lot of the most preparation that probably goes into it. But I think the one thing you get out of television is the response you get from it, just the amount of eyeballs that see it. That's probably where I probably get the most reward because you're getting feedback. It's not always good. It's probably more negative.
Is that right?
Good. Yeah.
So you're a Twitter man?
I'm on social media, to follow up, to be up to speed with. I think the first time I hear anything is usually on Twitter. So I'm on Twitter, and as I said, probably 100 messages you get, probably 90 of them are negative, to be honest, on what you have to say. But I understand that's just, you polarise people with what you say.
Well, you do. You've got 6 commitments a week, so you're saying lots of things, aren't you?
You are, you are. And I'm conscious of the balance of also making sure it's just you're not whacking people all the time, and you're pumping up people and you're giving people positive feedback.